God's sovereignty over each of our lives as women and to encourage each other by sharing our stories. My name is Sophie, and today I'm joined by Naomi.
Hello.
Hi, Naomi. Welcome. So first of all, can you tell us a little bit about who you are?
Sure, yeah, I'm Naomi. I'm 33 and I'm a stay-at-home mum. I'm married to Rich. We've been married for 11 years now. We've got 3 children, Jemima, who's 6, Ezekiel, who's 4, and Kezia, who's 2.
Excellent.
And I've been coming to Cornerstone for about 13 years.
Lovely, thank you. So we're going to start, I guess, from the beginning, and it would be great for you to tell us a little bit about your family background and how you were brought up.
Sure, yeah. So I grew up going to church as a child. I went to the local Church of England church in the village that I grew up in near Portsmouth. So that's sort of my background. And then when I was 4, sadly my grandpa died. And that was the first time I really felt confronted with death. And I remember, I think it's probably one of my earliest memories, having a chat to my mum about that and asking her why my grandpa had to die. And then I remember her telling me that at that point she told me we all die.
Yeah.
And that absolutely terrified me. I just remember, even now I remember that feeling of fear of that's going to happen to me one day, it's going to happen to everybody. And I was absolutely petrified by that thought. But then my mum went on to tell me something about Jesus and something about the cross. That's all I remember about that part of the conversation. And because of Jesus and the cross, that meant we didn't have to die. And in a way that was quite confusing, because in one breath she told me we would have to die and then we wouldn't have to die.
Yeah.
So there's a lot I didn't understand. But I just remember thinking in that moment, okay, I need to trust in Jesus. Otherwise this fear is going to consume me in a 4-year-old kind of way.
Yeah. Okay. That's really interesting. So did that reassure you at that time that you could put your trust in him and find that answer?
Yeah,
there?
I think so. I mean, like I said, there was a lot I didn't understand. But,
yes.
I mean, that's the purity of the faith, isn't it? The purity of the faith. We trust in Jesus. To save us from death, really. So, like I said, there was a lot I didn't understand. But, we trust.
But in a sense, Jesus calls the little children to come to him, doesn't he?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
you don't need to have, I mean, then that develops, obviously, so we can talk about that. But you can come to him in that simplicity of a child's faith, really.
Yeah, I think so. And I think looking back, that's exactly what it was. And there were times where I did still have the fear, but like you say, it was a reassurance that I could come back to Jesus each time. And definitely a reassurance.
Great. Can you tell us a little bit about how your faith then developed and matured over the years? What helped you? What did you benefit from for that?
Yeah, sure. So over my lifetime, I've had struggles, as we all have, with our faith, with doubts and things. But I kept going to that church, the Church of England church I mentioned at the beginning, and that sort of gave me the foundation of the faith that I have today, I think. There were a lot of children at that church, so a lot of peers, and that was especially helpful for me in my teenage years, where I had a lot of struggles and doubts and things, I think. To have those friends alongside me who were also going through those struggles, but were also professing faith, and that was really encouraging. I'm really thankful to God for that church and for that friendship group and the youth group that was at that church at the time.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you were part of the youth, or if it was just a church where you would just attend the normal service. So did you have like Sunday school kind of lessons and youth? Yeah,
growing up there wasn't Sunday school. I was a lot in the services, but there was a midweek group as a child, and then I think when I was early teens, the church actually employed a youth worker. So there was someone they employed to sort of encourage me and the other youth in the church, which was also immensely helpful. and they would put on sort of youth services where we'd run the services and things, which was a lot of fun, you know, part of sort of enjoying the church as well. And yeah, so that was a big encouragement to have that.
Yeah. Okay. Could you tell us a little bit more about how what you came to understand better as you went to that church? Is there something in particular that perhaps became clearer to you as you grew up in the faith?
Yeah, I think having put my faith in Jesus, there was a lot of questions about, is this real, in my head? I longed for it to be because of that fear that I initially had. And I think that, especially in my teenage years, there are a lot of people who, probably unknowingly to them, sort of said a word or two here and there that sort of prompted me to realise that it is real, to feel the truth of Jesus, the truth that Jesus actually existed and he did actually die. And I think that church sort of gave me that foundation.
Great. You mentioned going through some troubles when you were perhaps a teenager. Could you tell us a little bit about that and how the church helped you and these teenagers alongside you, how they contributed to strengthening you and helping you along the way, really?
Yeah, sure. I think the sort of the standard teenage struggles, really, of peer pressure, not feeling like I fitted in particularly well. I got on okay at school, but especially sort of early secondary school, they were some tough years in terms of friends and settling into a friendship group. And I think looking back, like there was that insecurity at school, and then I was able to go to church, and I was very secure with my friends at church. So actually, I think I'm very thankful for the church at that point in my teenage years to have that security in, it was in my friends at that point, and then being pointed to Jesus through that at church. Yes,
it's interesting how sometimes we forget that this is our family essentially. So it feels, it's obviously normal that you would feel perhaps closer and more encouraged by these people, but also it reminds us that we don't belong to the world, really. So there's always going to be that gap between how we perceive things and other people.
Yeah, that's quite a good example of it, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Great. Okay, thank you. So I wonder if you can take us forward in time, if we just go chronologically, really, and just tell us a little bit about what happened later in your life, perhaps through your teenagers or university or careers or anything like that.
Sure. Yeah. So I came to Kingston for university, age 18, and that's when I came across Cornerstone Church. I initially came across Cornerstone Church because they were doing a midweek meeting for students. So I went along to that, and then joined the church not long after that. God has really used Cornerstone Church to deepen my faith, really, and I'm so thankful to him for that, and to the leaders of the church and everyone at the church, really, to sort of I think I'd got to the point in my life when I came to uni where there's parts of the Bible I thought, well, I trust it, but I don't really understand it, and I'll understand it later, when we get to heaven, which in a sense is true, but I think there were certain parts of the Bible that were opened up at Cornerstone. I thought, maybe I could have a go at trying to understand this now. Revelation, for example, not pretending to understand it at all, but I understand a lot more than I thought I ever would on earth. So yes, it's been a wonderful journey of deepening my faith at Cornerstone Church.
So would you say that in a sense your first church provided what you needed more as a child and teenager to help you grow, and then Cornerstone added perhaps more depth to that in the teaching that we do sometimes.
Yeah, I would definitely say that. Yeah, I'm very thankful to the church I grew up going to for that foundation.
Yeah.
And then I'm very thankful for Cornerstone as well for deepening my faith. In a way I didn't expect that, but I'm very thankful to God that he's done that.
Great. Right. So you obviously met Rich at Cornerstone, is that correct?
I did, yeah.
You
yeah,
did,
that's right.
okay.
Yeah, he'd been here a bit before me, but then we met at Cornerstone. Yeah, not long after I started, actually.
Great. We're not going to ask all the details of this unless you wanted to share that, obviously. But yeah, so it is really great to see how your faith has grown over the years. I wonder if there were some challenges as you went along the way in terms of learning more about God and, perhaps going to more intellectual questions as well. What would you say challenged you and also encouraged you as you carried on?
Yeah, I think one thing that God has taught me a plethora of things, not all of which I can recall right now, but
yes.
One of the key things that stands out for me at the moment is how he's teaching me to trust in him. I think a lot of people, including myself, like to have control or feel like we have control anyway. I don't think we ever really do. But actually, to give that control over to God is something that I'm really being taught. So I think one of the key points where I've learned that is through the pandemic, where God really showed me how trustworthy he is through his word. So one of the key verses that I held on to, or God showed me and then I held on to it through the pandemic, was Philippians 4 verses 6 to 7, which says, do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation by prayer and petition with thanksgiving present your requests to God, and the peace of God that transcends understanding will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. And that verse is very countercultural, I think. And applying it to the pandemic, there were so many unknowns during the pandemic, especially at the very beginning. How was our health going to fare? How were the children going to be? Job security, that kind of thing. There was lots to be anxious about, and I was very anxious about all of those things. But then I saw that verse in Philippians that tells us not to be anxious about anything, no caveat, just like anything, which God in his mercy showed me was that included the pandemic. I, over a period of time, gave my requests to God, as that passage says, including the fact that I didn't want this anxiety. I wanted to trust in God. And then he gave me the peace that passage then talks about, that transcends understanding. And it really struck me one day, like, wow, I have peace in the midst of all of this, the chaos of the pandemic. And I had to keep going back to God to have that. It wasn't sort of plain sailing from then on, but through that, God really showed me how trustworthy he is in his word. There's been ups and downs since then, but God is continuing that journey. I'm really trying to trust him with my time at the moment. And having 3 small children, my time is limited. So actually realising that I can give it to him and he can give me what I need when I need it is... I'm not there by any means, but it's something that I'm learning. And also to learn to trust God with my children. That's something that I'm really keen to do, because he loves them more than I do, and I need to keep remembering that. Trust God.
Yes, I was going to ask you about how that wanting to give the control to God comes into play when you raise when you're raising the children, actually, with Rich, obviously, and how that comes into play, really. But you've already mentioned that. I think it is really interesting to see that however much we know about God and all these, all these big questions that were perhaps answered when you came to Cornerstone or just over time, actually comes back to something really simple, which is just to trust him.
Trust in Jesus.
And that's really interesting that you did that at 4 years old already, and then that just kept on growing and growing, but it came back to the same thing, and you didn't need necessarily, we do need understanding, obviously, but that essential thing of trust, just very simply, is always at the core of everything. And that's for all of us really, as Christians.
Yeah, that's so true. So it's always been about the same thing since I was 4 to now. That's really true. And I think we can add things to our lives and try and add things, but we need to come back to trust.
Yeah, and praise God that He's shown you that so early in your life, that it feels like it's really affected your life throughout. That even through teenagers, which are never easy, and through changes in your life, perhaps having children, getting married, all of that, not in that order, sorry. It all comes back to that, really. That's really precious, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is, yeah.
Praise God for that. Great. So you've already mentioned very recent things that perhaps you have learned or you want to grow in. Is there anything you want to add on that?
I think lessons of sort of patience as well as something God is teaching me, as a wife and a mum, and sort of until I was married, I could do what I wanted when I wanted, and buy what I wanted when I wanted.
Yes,
within reason. But becoming a wife, you're sharing a life, and then becoming a mum, you patience is tested beyond what I could have even imagined. But God is using that to grow me, and it's a form of suffering, I suppose, a personal suffering when you struggling to be patient, and we know that God uses our sufferings for our good and His glory. So sort of learning to trust God in that as well. Yeah,
and I can imagine as the kids started going to school as well recently, that other challenges were added to that as well.
Yeah. There's a separation from the children at that point, but they still have difficulties. They've still got struggles that I'm not even necessarily there for, so it's very difficult to help them through that. But so that distance adds another level of difficulty, but then an area to then trust God with the children. It's definitely an opportunity to pray.
Yes.
We should be praying all the time, but I struggle with that. But God's given me that as an opportunity to pray more to Him, to trust the children to Him in that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we can probably end with this question, which is, would you, if you had to share any advice with someone younger in the faith, since you've been going with the Lord for quite a long time now, I guess, what advice would you give to a younger Christian?
I think just keep your focus on Jesus. I think, as we were saying, Jesus is where I realised I needed what I realised I needed when I was 4, and what I'm realising I need to trust in now as well, just to keep your focus on Jesus, really. He's our safety net, and when I think about raising my children personally, the weeks where I trust God go much better than the ones where I don't. And seeing that over time is really really helpful as well. But I'd pass that on to trust each day. God says, "Give us today our daily bread." Like daily, we've got to come to Him, and ask Him for help. And I guess practically that looks like praying through everything and carving out time to read the Bible.
Yeah.
Ideally daily.
Yeah.
I think the other thing would be just get stuck into a local church. I think, as I was saying, like, church was so helpful as a child and then as an adult as well. And we see in the Bible that it tells us to keep meeting together so that we can encourage one another. And I've definitely seen that to be true in my life.
Yeah, that's great. I think, in the sense, for very young Christians, just taking these simple steps towards God, almost, in a sense, and going to Him and praying and reading the Word and committing to a church, which sometimes can be hard because you might think, oh, I need to find the perfect fit. It needs to be, everything perfect for me to attend this church. But actually, we don't need that. We just need to commit to it and to actually stick with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And often that will develop through time. And you've shown with the 2 churches that you've attended throughout your life that they were right for different times in your life, in a sense. And it might be that we were very different, but actually
they were.
God provided what you needed through them at that time, and He continues to do so. So we can really trust that, that it comes through just trusting in Him, and He will provide what we need. And it might be very different things at different times. Yeah. So that's really encouraging, and it's really simple in a sense. Yeah, it doesn't need to be a massive list of things we need to do, really, in a sense.
Exactly.
Yeah,
there's no perfect church.
Exactly.
We're not in a perfect world. But
exactly. But I think that can be really encouraging for everyone, really, but perhaps for younger Christians in particular, just that simplicity. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us, Naomi. That's been really encouraging. And thank you everyone for listening. That's it for this episode of Sister Stories, but join us again next time.